About Tesla, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well. How was the rollout going?
Oh, it's getting exciting. It's really exciting. I think it's probably the most exciting times we ever saw with FSD rollouts. Just every day we have something new or a new version coming out, or what's unbelievable. Just a quick update for everyone. So basically, we have multiple V12 versions being rolled out right now, like in the wild right now. The dominant one, the biggest one, is still version 12.3, and it's about 2/3 of the entire beta fleet in the US and Canada. So that's still dominates, but it hasn't seen any new additional cars being added lately. So it's still sitting where it was a few days back. But because it's such a major rollout, some cars are still only getting it now. So it's just, it's usually a slow process. So you may still see some people getting it today, but it's not because new cars are targeted. It's just because they're late to install it. Then the latest developments would be, so version 12.3.1, that's the one that started over the weekend, and now it's going to pretty much about 3% of the entire fleet, so it's expanded. And the biggest news about this version is that it's now going to Canada. Canada has been patiently waiting for V12, and now that's the day. So as of this morning, Canada is actively getting this version 12, and that's the version that is currently going there. It's predominantly going to Canada this morning. So then on top of it, we have versions 12.3.2 and also 12.3.2.1 that just showed up today. Those are the two latest versions, and what's interesting about them is that they are being rolled out to new cars almost exclusively. So the cars that being delivered today and yesterday, they are getting that most recent version. So yesterday it was 12.3.2, and now as of today there is an update to it, 12.3.2.1. I don't know if it's a bug fix or some page or just some additional cars that are now being included. I'm not quite sure, but that's what people are getting. Those who are taking delivery today, and they're also getting test rides on FSD from what we are hearing. So let's hope we can have someone, maybe someone will join us today to discuss that. That would be cool. So that's where we stand right now. So there's multiple versions rolling out right now. There are still there are still new updates probably coming, and none of them except for 12.3 is going really wide at this point. But they're probably still working out a few, minor things before they can roll it out to everyone. The great news for everyone is that we are finally seeing that merge. So the latest versions, 12.3.2 and 12.3.2.1, they're now on the 2024 software branch. That's something we've been waiting for a long time. So now we're finally merging the latest user interface development of newest features that have been released this year with the latest FSD software, and those two things now merge. And moving forward, at least in the short term, I think we will be all getting the best of both worlds. So once it starts rolling out, we should get the latest new features on the UI side. And it's not just UI. I mean, that's one of the 2024 features is that the auto park that's been missing for so long on the cars without ultrasonic sensors. So that's now included in that latest release. So that's really exciting. I can't wait to get this latest update.
Thank you for all that, Machine.
Do you have a question?
Do you? Well, it looks like Wes has a question.
What is your question?
Wes 6 what's the question?
Wait, what's your question?
You have a question?
That was my question.
Oh, what's your question?
I actually have a question. So about Tesla, thanks for the update. I've been waiting for FSD 13.3 forever. I thought, somehow I was overlooked, but I took my car in for service about a week and a half ago. It's a 2017 Model S, and I haven't received version 12 at all. And then this morning I looked down and realized I was on the 2024 branch. I don't know. I think they may have updated my software while I was in the at the service center. And so, assuming I get 12.3.2 soon, will I kind of get back in step with all the updates, or is 2024 kind of on a slower process or slower cycle, if you will, than the 2023 models?
Basically, what we had until now is that there was one branch. There was the FSD updates, and all the development V12 and all the updates to V12. That was lacking. That was behind the user interface and other changes that that Tesla was doing on the 2024 branch. So now everything is being merged into one version. So hopefully in the next few days or maybe in the next couple of weeks, we will be all getting that latest update, which is the merge of both things. So right now, majority of the cars in the fleet, of all the cars in the fleet, not just those that use FSD, they're currently on the 2024 branch. So most cars are not currently eligible to get the FSD V12 until those latest versions that are just showing up this week will go wide. And at that point, everyone will be starting with those who have FSD. But my understanding is that this will be actually pushed to all cars eventually, so that anyone could try FSD right away and get the most recent version, V12. So that's really exciting time. We still need to wait a little bit for those who are still on the 2024 branch right now. They will still have to wait, but hopefully not too long, because if they're putting this on brand new cars, it means that they're confident that this is good enough. So once they test and verify everything, that will probably go wide. And my guess is that it's going to happen in the next few days. So it shouldn't take too long.
Thank you, and maybe you or Omar can answer this. So just for clarification, will the people that are currently
right? Just Omar or about Tesla,
or anybody, yeah, or Machine, yeah.
Well, I just want to point out that you singled them out, and probably for good reason.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about this openly, but you're calling me out.
You're just mean. Just another mean person.
But just real quick with the
why do you hate machines so much?
Dude, it's the Popeye thing. You know what I mean? Either you're into Popeyes or you're not. I'm not a Popeye guy. I don't go that way.
Which way do you go? KFC?
I am Chick-fil-A all day long.
It's just not that interesting. I find Chick-fil-A, it's okay.
I'm a low risk guy. I was just curious if the 2023 people will now become 2024 on the 2024 branch with this merge.
Yes, that's what is going to happen pretty soon.
Thanks.
Because just to clarify, so the latest version, so that's the 12.3.2 and 12.3.2.1, those the most recent versions that are currently going to brand new cars, they are on the 2024 bridge. So that's versions 2024.3.5 and 2024.3.6 respectively. So this is the merge that we've been waiting for. But they're cautiously only sending it to new cars, which is kind of funny. But I think it's sort of temporary thing.
I do have another question. I think this one's for Omar. Yaman, if you're cool with that.
I'm cool.
All right. Hey, Omar, about a week ago, I mentioned this yesterday, Martin Vieca, if I'm pronouncing that right, said that shareholders that qualify will have their Cybertrucks delivery accelerated. And he also said yesterday that they sent out an email to those people. I did not receive one, and I don't know how to reach him. I tried to reply to his thing on, his X post that wasn't successful. I can't seem to DM him. I've heard that IR, investor relations for Tesla, is kind of difficult to get a hold of. Do you or anybody else have a suggestion how I can try to reach out to them so I can get this email?
I mean, just email ir@tesla.com or email mviecha@tesla.com, and they should get you sorted.
Okay, cool. I heard that they often don't reply to those things. I didn't know if there was another path, but I'll do that. Thanks.
Well, if you're a shareholder who owns more than 500 shares, they should respond to you. So just check your junk filter and then email them if you don't find anything.
I will. Thank you. And then one last thing for Omar. Have you or anybody else heard if the Cybertruck screen will tilt eventually?
Steering wheel tilt?
No, the screen. I'm sorry, the 19-inch
Oh.
screen.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any apparatus to tilt right now, and it's not really clear how they'd add that. So, they could always sort of redesign it, change the part or whatever, but it doesn't look like there's any sort of tilting functionality coming. It can be kind of hard to reach at times, especially without auto steer. But if they're able to ship auto steer, that should make it a little bit easier to use the screen, I think. But it's a much larger screen than the 3 and Y, so reaching from one end to the other is further. And also it's a bigger vehicle, so the screen is also kind of further away from you. So tilting would be good, I think, but they don't have any plans to offer it. It may just be too complicated.
All right. We have a lot to talk about.
Thank you, guys.
Tilting of the screen is a secondary topic today. So let's see. So we talked about the wide release of FSD. About Tesla gave us an update. Thank you very much. There seems to be 12.3.2.1 rolling out to customers, which is great. Omar, there is a bridge collapse in Baltimore, and Ford CFO came out and said that their supply chain is affected. Yellen, Treasury Secretary Yellen, today put together a task force talking about supply chains, and there is I don't know what to call it, but there's a bit of an alarm going on around supply chains being affected largely, very significantly for the next few years. Do you have any comments, any initial takes on this?
Yeah, you asked me yesterday, and I hadn't really heard too much about this, but since then I read the news a little bit more. And it turns out that the Baltimore port there is one of the number one ports for auto imports in the United States, interestingly enough. So, the U.S. automotive supply chain will be disrupted by the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, dealing another blow to America's automotive ecosystem, still recovering from pandemic related setbacks. it's a large port with a lot of flow through it, so it's going to have an impact, Ford CFO John Lawler said. We'll work on workarounds. We're going to have to divert parts to other ports along the East Coast or elsewhere in the country. So a lot of parts come in through Baltimore, as well as, for example, like Jaguar imports their cars from there, and other vehicles sometimes even from American companies are produced overseas and imported. So yeah, it's a very big port. Not everybody's affected. It looks like the number one is Mazda, number two is Volkswagen, number three is Mercedes in terms of finished cars coming in. So for foreign automakers, it's kind of an issue. But of course, there's other ports out there they can redirect to. But obviously, it kind of complicates things. It upends their supply chains. It upends the whole sort of process there. A lot of the American automakers are buying parts from overseas, from Europe and China, and those are coming in through the Baltimore port as well. So it appears to be impacting the auto industry in particular. This port, where you can no longer get into the port because of the bridge collapsing, it is a major auto center for both finished cars and parts.
Freddie, thank you, Omar.
My understanding is that Baltimore is largely important because it has the infrastructure to handle cars, so the railroads and heavy machinery, tractors and that sort of thing. Um, if if you are to shift the capacity that's lost from Baltimore to the other ports in the area, I think there are a few. Then you know there's currently sort of a dip in import traffic, and if you shift the Baltimore to the other ports in the area, you are sort of below the peaks that we reached during the pandemic. So in terms of parts, there shouldn't be a long and protracted disruption for cars that need to come through Baltimore, and obviously that doesn't affect Tesla, since Tesla makes all its U.S. cars in the U.S. It's not going to be an issue.
Omar?
Baltimore's port handled 847,158 autos and light trucks in 2023, the most of any U.S. port. In 2023, U.S. auto sales were about 15 million units. So we're talking about 5.5% of U.S. auto retail sales coming through this port.
Rizali?
Hey, I have something unrelated.
Okay, Meta. Just let's stick to this for a second, unless if it's urgent.
Oh, I was just going to call you out for forging a bet.
Forging that? What do you mean?
You posted a coffee bet that I didn't agree to. You tagged me as if I
Well,
said yes.
it's an offer. But okay, any other
It's
questions?
an offer. Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the Baltimore bridge collapse? Machine?
I'm interested in if there's going to be any potential macroeconomic effect of supply chain disruption in general, causing a bit of inflation overall. I don't know how much this seems to be a major port, and so I'm just curious. Like, if we can, I don't know. I can't model. I don't know how much effect, but that's something to be wary of. I mean, I did watch season 2 of The Wire, so I have some expertise in the port business in Baltimore, but I don't remember them getting into this issue. It wasn't well covered, so maybe I have to rewatch it.
Is it more or less traffic than the Suez Canal, like proportionally?
The Swiss Canal?
Suez Canal.
Suez?
Oh, way less. Not even
Yeah, it's
close.
gotta be way less.
But we have the capacity at other ports is the bigger thing. So most of the traffic is just going to shift to other ports. It'll be bad for the city of Baltimore, but in terms of U.S. macro, it shouldn't have a huge effect.
Hey,
And
what's up,
then
man? You got a room for a couple 100,000 extra cars at your port? Oh yeah. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I
We'll
mean
just bring them over.
finished cars. It will be an issue when it comes to finished cars, for sure. But that doesn't affect Tesla since Tesla's not, Baltimore takes cars from Europe and South America. It doesn't take any cars from Asia.
So I just asked Grok, why is Baltimore such a major port for auto imports? And it said, number one, geographical advantage. It's located on the east coast of the United States. It's well positioned for the Europeans and etc. to import cars in. So yes, there are other ports, but you're probably going to have to travel a longer distance. It'll maybe add some time in. Strategic location. Baltimore is strategically located near major U.S. markets and has excellent land transportation links, including highways and railroads, facilitating efficient distribution of imported vehicles to dealerships across the country. So they've got it all set up. They know what trains to take. They have deals with the train company to get the cars. It's been running like clockwork. And now they have to call them and they have to say, okay, well, we need a different train to bring these cars from a different port. And maybe not every port has the capacity we need. So we need to maybe split it up across a few ports, get a few different trains. There's, confusion. It's a new system. That kind of stuff is all bound to happen. Infrastructure and facilities. The Port of Baltimore is equipped with specialized terminals and infrastructure designed to handle auto imports. It has one of the largest automobile handling facilities in the US, with modernized and efficient loading, unloading, processing, and storage facilities. And those storage facilities are sometimes important because you have to pay the tariff after you take it out of the port. So sometimes they like to keep their cars there because they don't have to pay the tariff until they move it out. As weird as that
Okay,
is.
there's just before we go to Meta, thank you, Omar. Have you guys seen Lara Logan's theory that this might be an act of cyber terrorism? Meta.
I don't have an answer to that question if you want to ask someone else.
Well, while you say what you have to say, I'm sure a lot of people right now are looking it up because
Okay.
I just saw it a few minutes ago.
Okay. I know it's not a direct comparison, but the Suez Canal carries about 12% of global freight, and the Baltimore port carries about 11% of US freight. The Baltimore traffic jam clogged up global transport for like 6 months after like a 1 month blockage. I don't think it'll take a month to get the bridge up. So I think this could be a really big backup for a long time. To answer Machine's question.
Here's my real question. This is America. We speak proper English here. If you look up the Suez Canal, there's a Z at the end, not an S, a Z. This is not unclear like Tesla. Is it Tesla or Tesla? It's Suez. Say it with me. Suez.
I'm not the one taking enunciation classes. I'm terrible at it. I'm just going to call it Suez.
All right, Omar, have you seen the Lara Logan post that Tom Lee reposted?
I didn't see it yet, but it was a thought that occurred to me this morning.
Yeah,
Just
let me just pin this up here as well while we talk about it. So it's been on YouTube live stream for a little bit, and I shared it to the space as well. So if folks want to kind of check it out, there's a 10-minute clip from a right-wing media account, I guess, and yeah, I don't want to get political, but it's just a theory at this point. Omar.
yeah, it was a thought that occurred to me too, just especially watching the footage of what happened. The bridge collapsed due to a vessel strike, meaning a ship crashed into one of the pillars holding up the bridge, which caused the bridge to collapse very, very rapidly. And, tragically, people lost their life. People were driving across the bridge, 20 people went into the water. And if you look at the video of what happened, you can see that the ship lost power right before this happened. So you see the lights go off on the ship. Lights are off for a couple seconds and the lights turn back on, presumably because some type of diesel backup generator or something turned on. Then you see the ship kind of turn, presumably because they dropped their anchor. Someone was speculating on X. And then at that point, they kind of turned and hit the bridge. And there may have been some sort of loss of power on board the ship that caused them to end up hitting the bridge. So a cyber attack is a possibility, and I expect it'll be fully investigated by, Homeland Security and the CIA or the FBI or whoever. But if I had to put my money on it, I'd say that it's probably an example of somebody doing something stupid rather than a cyber attack. However, this is the first time in 50 years that we've had a boat strike a bridge. So it's not something that happens all that often. Seemingly, we've solved for this problem and it never happens, but it just happened again. So it is strange and does, I think, deserve a full investigation.
Is it the case that we don't have boats striking bridges, or we don't have bridges collapsing when boats strike bridges? Because there's a difference between designing a bridge where when one pillar goes out, the whole bridge comes down, and designing a bridge that has some fault tolerance.
Yeah, so she says that this couldn't have hit the bridge in a worse place. And it's like one of the, there's a bunch of pillars, and this kind of hit at the really like the worst one.
How do we confirm that, though? Could it have just been bad engineering?
She's citing some sources that supposedly know what they're talking about, and that's all we know right now.
In some other countries, they would do like an engineering review, and they would have a bunch of independent engineers review it, and then it'd be like a public matter. For some reason in the United States, we don't have like public engineering boards that do that kind of work.
The bridges in other areas, like in the Bay Area, have sort of like protective barriers to kind of redirect boats around them, that this one did not. But in general, I don't think bridges are designed to withstand side impacts from massive barges. I think if you wanted to design them that way, it would obviously be extremely expensive. But what I want to know is, how did the power go out on this thing? And would a Tesla Megapack, a set of Megapacks on this boat made a difference? Do we need Tesla engineering on this boat to make sure the power didn't go out?
An alternative theory is they weren't able to steer the boat, and they tried to reboot the system, which is something you would try if you felt like you're going for a crash. Like, I don't think we should jump to a conclusion that it's a terrorist attack.
Well, we're not jumping to a conclusion. We're exploring the theories. I'm not specifically said this is a theory.
Can you imagine, in a car, like if you lose power for power steering, how hard it is to turn the car? You're trying to steer this barge and the power steering goes out, and you're just like trying to turn the wheel. Someone's got a wheel somewhere, right? And they just turn this thing and it just doesn't move. That would
I
suck.
believe Jack Sparrow is the one that holds the wheel.
Michael,
Can you hear me?
yeah, you don't have to ask if I can hear you. We can hear you 99% of the time.
Okay,
And
first time
in the
doing this, I'll give it a
in the
crack
off
though. Thank you though.
in the off chance that we can't hear you, I will tell you. So
Perfect.
if people ask like if we can hear you, that's 100 times, 99 times we don't have to hear that, and the audience doesn't have to hear that.
Okay,
So for future reference, just don't ask.
perfect. Ships, as they're coming into a port, will require a pilot on board, a ship of over 500 gross tons. That ship is well over 500 gross tons. When the power, for some reason, is disconnected, a generator might fail. I would imagine that would run on diesel or electric, that boat. Within 40 seconds, they need to have a secondary electric system come on, and that should be able to power all emergency systems on board, including steering, emergency lighting, navigation, and so forth, and also have the ability to drop the anchors if needed. That would slow the boat down. That's all I have to say.
Any questions from Michael Machine?
Do you think they should have had one of those bicycles that connects to the light bulb that you can ride? Do you think if they had a few of those, that would have helped?
All right.
Absolutely.
Freddie? Meta.
Is 40 seconds, in your experience, is 40 seconds set because of that's how long it takes the generators to come online, or because that's like an insanely small amount of, or it's like it's felt to be really fast? Because the reason why I ask is if boats were required to have, say, a power wall or something like that on board, at least to bridge between the failure of a system and the generator coming online, would that actually make things safer?
40 seconds just is a setting that is, or a rule that is put in by the IMO. 40 seconds is a very, very long time, but it's really just it's a ridiculously long time compared to, say, another generator. Like if we require another generator on board because the our power load increases, like we'll have a generator come on and within a few seconds and align itself with the other generator, synchronize itself. So it is a very long time, but it's just put there for safety. And then there's other sort of, let's call it reserves on that, redundancies for the start systems, that the secondary system should start, like there has to be 2 separate start systems on that emergency generator as well. So it should start no matter what, but 40 seconds is a long time, but that is the rule.
Sounds like we need mega packs on ships, or at least power walls.
Wessex.
I do have kind of a related question. I wonder why we don't have mega packs, or we didn't have mega packs in Germany, in Berlin, when we had the outage, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Sawyer. Oh. I was just about to ask him his thoughts. Let's see if he wants to come back up. All right. Omar, I see you pinned something at the top. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, it's just a video of the incident right before the crash. So if you want to take a look at it yourself and try and figure out what you think happened, the person who posted it gave his own interpretation. But you can see the video right there of the moments leading up to the accident.
So what percent probability would you assign to this being a cyber terrorism attack?
25%.
25%. Does anyone in the speaker board have a different estimate?
I think it was very unlikely a terrorist attack. It just seems like a really low probability way. Like you're planning on turning the power off on a barge at exactly the time that it's like near a bridge so that maybe it'll crash into it. It just doesn't seem like a high probability chance. I think you would go somewhere else and do something that has a better chance. It seemed like a 1% chance of a terrorist attack.
I was gonna regretfully agree, Machine. Calculating like the currents, and the boat seems to be going in the same direction before the power goes out. and it seems like it goes out multiple times, and it doesn't look like it hit it directly. It kind of like scraped it. So I think calculating all the currents and the timing and all that, it would be way more work for this to be a cyber attack than what they could do with that work if they were trying to actually attack something.
Yeah, I was going to go with 5%, but I think a cyber attack could also be internal. Somebody on the ship might have. I don't think it happened, but there's another way to do it. Somebody on the ship might be turning off the power at a critical moment, for example.
Yeah, can I just chime in here?
Yeah.
These boats are usually very archaic. When you, a lot of them wouldn't even had very like internet would be absolutely limited. The way that the bridge equipment is connected to the rest of the vessel is just does not connect. It is archaic. A lot of this, all this shit. It would have to be somebody on board. 99.9999%, if that was the case. And hydraulic, the steering system is again would be hydraulic. It doesn't require a huge amount of power to steer the boat, and usually these will have to be tested actually before they enter port. So there you go.
Thank you, Michael. Good to have you on the speaker board. It says on your profile, super yacht chief engineer, Tesla and TSLA owner. Would you like to add anything to that background?
No, love your space, Yaman. Here most days. Yeah, it's a good listen. Enjoy it.
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess that covers it. Let's see what else do we have to talk about. That was very informative. That's really cool. Really, really cool. Earlier we had about Tesla tell us about 12.3.3.1 rolling out to Tesla customers, version 2024. He also talked about FSD rolling out to Canada. Omar.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the fact that we saw a number of important milestones on FSD. So we saw the 12.3.2.1 go out. That one includes Auto Park. So now Auto Park is included in the FSD branch. It's a 2024 branch, which means all the cars can get it. And we also saw FSD go out to Canada. So a lot of milestones happened quickly. I think people who thought they would be waiting forever for a 2024 branch or for it to come to Canada, it didn't have much to fear after all. I mean, people act like sometimes them issuing a new 2024 branch is like turning water into wine or something. It's relatively easy to do, but it just takes a little bit to test. So every car is going to be getting FSD 12. It's going to be included in every software. You won't even have to download a new software if you want to install it. It's just going to be on every car. It's going to be in every firmware build. And all you have to do is subscribe and you can just start using it instantly. No software update required. So that's how it's going to be going forward. And it's really good that they've got the 2024 branch out. They've merged Auto Park in already this month in March, which, just like they said they would. And yeah, all cars will be able to qualify. Now, the last remaining thing is the new Model 3. But my understanding is that should be coming up pretty shortly too with FSD Beta 12, now that it's on the 2024 branch. So that'll be great as well. And then every car in North America will be able to run FSD Beta 12.
Meta. No hands mode. No hands mode.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting to see is if the next few releases for non-new vehicles, like excluding Model 3 and Cybertruck, are continuing to be FSD plus mainline branches. Because as you delete the 300,000 lines of code, which obviously they haven't deleted yet because they're using for highway, but as you actually delete that, you're going to get to a state where the overlap between the infotainment code and the FSD code isn't so high that having two different branches really buys you much. So I think they would actually end up being more organizationally efficient and they only have one terminal branch.
All right. Any other questions on FSD? Questions, comments on FSD? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we have a number of really good speakers right now. Maybe we can talk about Amazon's investment into Anthropic. And for that discussion, if Wes is available, he's welcome to come up as well. In the meantime, thank you, Pradhan Prabhakara, for joining Patreon. And if you'd like to be as cool as Pradhan, you can do so at the top of your screens. All right. Who wants to start? Amazon's investments into Anthropic seems to be a major investment, multi-billion-dollar investment, and Amazon hasn't done an investment like this for a while. So, Meta?
Was the investment in the form of credits or was it cash? Because my understanding is that Anthropic uses Google Cloud, and it would make a lot of sense if you were trying to coax them over to give them credits like Azure did for OpenAI.
Yeah, I think I think it's important consideration, but at the same time, like, doesn't really matter, right? If Amazon was charging them and now for a stake, they decide not to charge them for a while, it's still an investment,
No, but Amazon wasn't charging them because they were using a different cloud provider.
Omar?
So the deal does include a provision requiring them to use AWS for training. And it actually requires them to use Amazon's compute chips for training. They're chips that compete with NVIDIA essentially. So Anthropic will be forced to use that essentially as part of the deal. So I call these hand job deals because the company is essentially jerking itself off in a sense, right? So you invest $3 billion into Anthropic, but as a provision of the deal, they have to use your cloud service. So now they're taking the $2.75 billion you gave them and they're giving it right back to you. And it's showing up on as revenue on your top line, but you now also have this equity position, which is also growing fast because, oh my God, AI, they have an LLM. And Anthropic, for people who don't know much about Anthropic was started by people who split out from OpenAI because they disagreed with the company on some stuff related to AI safety or some shit like that. And so they started their own thing. They've got their own LLM called Claude. Recently, they released Claude 3, which in a lot of evaluations, like for example, sort of blind evaluations where people think they pick the response they think is best, the Claude 3 Opus, their best model, has actually been outperforming GPT-4. And you've seen a lot of like buzz on X from people saying, "Oh, I'm actually, preferring Claude to GPT-4." So it's interesting how, first of all, OpenAI has this model and everybody thinks they've struck gold, but now you have, models from Anthropic, others, open source models, so many different models, some of them actually outperforming GPT-4 or arguably outperforming GPT-4. So that's, I think, an incredible turning point. Secondly, it's interesting that, LLMs are starting to become commoditized. You have quite a few serious players now. You've got, of course, OpenAI with their GPT series. You've got Google with their Gemini and Gemma. You've got Meta with their Llama 2, and they are training Llama 3. You've got XAI with Grok, and you've got Claude and Anthropic. So to really, there's a lot of different people. There's also Mistral. They're, I think, based off Llama or something. That's a French company, but basically every major player in LLMs needs a big tech sugar daddy because to really compete at the top level, to really train a state of the art LLM, it's just simply very expensive. So where are you going to get that money? OpenAI has Microsoft as their sugar daddy. Anthropic has Amazon. Amazon had made an investment prior to this, but now they're increasing their investment. They're giving them additional funding. Google, of course, is doing their own models with Gemini and Gemma. And,
Yeah.
Apple's kind of lost. They're going to Google.
Yeah. So to add specific to the numbers that Omar mentioned, Amazon invested $2.7 billion in what Phil Knocknut calls Amazon gift cards into Anthropic at an $18.4 billion valuation. And this is on top of a $1.25 billion before. So a total of $4 billion of value. West.
I think Omar said it really well. What's interesting is that I didn't know that Dario was there. I met with him several times in 2019 prior to the Microsoft deal. So it's super cool. Happy for him.
He's the CEO, isn't he? Or one
I
of the leaders for Anthropic?
He's one of the leaders, but I had no idea. That's super cool. I didn't think that at the time, like maybe this was as disruptive, the Microsoft deal, as now I'm starting to see. It was very disruptive because they totally split off back then. I literally was so focused on TPUs back at the time. I didn't realize how much turmoil was happening at OpenAI back then.
It's also worth pointing out, Wes can confirm, but I'm pretty sure they didn't split because of safety, but they split because of the Microsoft integration being their concern.
Yeah, that's looks like from a few different sources that's the case.
Which is ironic because now they're just integrating with Amazon anyway.
Exactly. But again, like this deal, I agree with Omar. This deal is just to counter the Microsoft OpenAI deal.
It's also insidious because Amazon's taking a bunch of chips no one's using that's just sitting there collecting dust and saying you must use these, and we're going to value it at $3 billion. And here's a deal.
Well, yeah, they want Anthropic to kind of build on those chips so that they don't collect dust, and then potentially they can build out tools and infrastructure better so that other companies can ramp up faster and get use out of them.
Amazon's like, we have a bunch of machines that are not being used. Anthropic is like, we don't have enough money to keep paying for machines. Let's make a deal together.
Yeah, that's how I see it too.
I'm looking at a post that talks about Claude 3 surpassed GPT-4 benchmarks. Meta, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't really put that much faith into the benchmarks that the companies create themselves. I think the ELO, the chatbot arena ELO dashboard is more telling. In that dashboard, they did surpass GPT-4, including the previews, but not by much. It's literally 2 points. So it's nothing to like phone home about. They're in the same realm.
West?
All of the big models that are in the open source or that are available for purchase at this point are all in the same realm. And it seems like they all just try to beat each other just by a little bit, but not too much, which tells you that cost is probably a bigger factor than trying to acquire customers.
No hands mode, West, no hands mode.
Yeah, I totally agree. I did use Claude 3 quite a bit last week. I haven't really this week because Grok is just working good enough for me. But it was actually really good. And pretty much every answer that it gave me back didn't hallucinate. So I really appreciated that. The hallucination has become the kind of limiting factor for me in using LLMs as a source of knowledge.
I think over time, like if you remember when search engines first came out, you couldn't just click on the first link. You had to like learn how to discern crap on the internet, even though that's not hallucinations. It was like human hallucinations, if you will. And
yeah, I agree.
People learn how to like do search terms better, how to filter for that kind of stuff. I think people are building those muscles as a society for how to use these virtual assistants.
Yeah, but some of these are really hard to tell if it's hallucinating or not because it writes very human-like sentences that you're like, maybe that is real. I don't feel the need to really cross-check it sometimes, and I'm like, gosh, that I don't know. I really need to check that and make sure and write a slightly different prompt. And it's like, sure enough, it's different.
I like Gemini's click the G button and it shows you sources and it calls out the lies. It'd be nice if you didn't have to do that in the first place. But there's also the thing you got to remember is these things are people pleasers. So if you ask it to disprove you and it fails to disprove you, it's more compelling that the case is true.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting to be doing, I guess, prompt engineering. I don't even know if I can call it that because, like, I'm just making shit up to ask it, and seeing how well it does. But it's functional and pragmatic, the questions that I'm asking, and it's also like, I would say, very new information or very new knowledge that's come into the world, and to see if it, like, recognizes that and understands it. And
Yeah,
Grok is actually really good with that, which I've been very impressed with.
I think everybody who says they're prompt engineering, it's like people who write an HTML file and go, "I'm a programmer." It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
This is not the same thing. There is
Yeah,
a concept of prompt engineering, but that's like you're writing, data sets and you have evals and you're doing chain of thought. That's prompt engineering. You're
yeah,
just writing prompts.
yeah. I agree. I know Machine is a much better prompt engineer than I am.
He's been doing it his whole life.
Yep.
Fake it till you make it. That's what I say.
It's also interesting that, as you guys mentioned earlier, and I pinned at the top a section that Omar posted, and I think Meta mentioned this earlier too, that Anthropic agreed to use Amazon-built custom chips. Wes, doesn't this say to you that these chips are, from a cost value perspective, as competitive as H100s or H200s or B100s or NVIDIA chips?
I think time is going to have to tell on that. So, for instance, if Anthropic actually produces production models and iterates on them with those custom chips, I assume this is Trainium, or did they say?
It's Trainium.
Omar?
Okay. So they're just a launch partner for Trainium, it sounds like.
If the
This is a big deal.
if the chips were really that good, they wouldn't have to pay them to use them. Hey, you want to buy our chips? We'll give you a bunch of money as an investment. Oh, yeah, sure, we can use those. They also agreed to use TPUs from Google too, so they're out here behind Starbucks saying, "Hey, give me some money. I'll use your chips. I'll use your chips. Whatever you want. TPUs, Amazon, I don't care." So, I mean, when someone's giving you it for you for free, then yeah, we would really love any training compute that you're willing to give us. Even if, we have to let you take an equity stake or whatever, they probably love to have them as an investor. But I mean, the real test ultimately is whether someone will want to pay for it and it'll actually win fair and square in the marketplace against Nvidia.
I think the thing is you need to bring in a significant amount of load so that you can kind of figure out the characteristics of the blocks that are activated so that when you make your next generation, you get the proportions right. And then you have to do it again and again because when you get the proportions more correct the next time, the profiles will change. So I think this is Amazon's way of saying, in a sense, we don't have enough AI stuff to do on our own. So we're just going to hire someone else to put their profile on there. Or maybe they do have enough load and they want to also see other load profiles so that their next generation and the generation after that gets better. So this doesn't bode well for Trainium where it is today, but it does bode reasonably well that they must have done some kind of benchmarking before they would commit to this, that it must be at least somewhat similar.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's literally the part that is the most significant information here, I think. That Anthropic's AI engineers agreed to use this exclusively.
No, it's not exclusive. It's not exclusive. They've agreed to use it, but they also have a contract to use Google Cloud. They're going to do both.
Well, I think the bottom line is you don't need to use NVIDIA GPUs. People are practically throwing
That's what
the
I'm
alternatives
saying.
at them. You know, they're saying,
Exactly.
here, please train on this. We'll give it to you for free. So here you have NVIDIA where you say, please, I have $40,000. Can I please have one of your shitty little things? And they go, maybe if we have some, we'll give them to you for $40,000. Meanwhile, you got Amazon over here saying, please use our chips. We'll make an investment in your company for billions of dollars. And they're saying, well, sure, yeah, we think we can do it. And honestly, it's a good branding move. Like for engineers, I mean, it matters a lot what other people use. Like, oh yeah, Amazon, okay, that's serious stuff.
Exactly.
They train Claude on that versus like, okay, who's training on this? Nobody. It's not handling real cutting edge workloads.
Well, before this deal, Amazon was the only big cloud provider that was left without an AI solution. Theoretically, if this goes well, Amazon could say, we're going to offer an API through Claude because Google's got Gemini and Microsoft's got OpenAI. If you're an AWS user today and you want to do cloud work and you want to do AI work, you have to leave Amazon or you have to run a open model, which are shittier by comparison.
NVIDIA down 5% today during trading hours.
Exactly. And I'm surprised it's not down more because this is a big deal.
Damn it. Are you saying I should have done that short?
Well, the thing is, like, I'm not saying what you should do with your investments,
I'm joking.
but I believe,
Just to say.
I know, but I believe that this is major. That's the biggest takeaway from this deal. That Anthropic, which is a major player, engineers, like the management of Anthropic isn't going to make this deal without the engineers buying to using these chips, right? So that it is hard because one thing that Jensen has been saying out and about is that even if you buy others' chips for free, we still come out on top on a total cost of ownership basis. So this deal is a data point against that claim.
The other thing I would say is it's been a year and I can't think of another big company that's come into existence that has training demands akin to these three. So if it's going to come into existence, you've got Apple, they're outsourcing their AI. You've got Facebook, I guess so maybe, okay, let's say 4 or 5 companies, but all the companies that have big AI training demand, I think existed a year ago. So the idea that there's going to be more and more foundational research firms popping up, I think is not going to pan out. And so NVIDIA is going to have to face the fact that if that training, if that academic training demand disappears, all those chips become available for inference.
Yeah. So we have 2 NVIDIA investors on the speaker board right now. And I would love to hear from them why my takeaway from this deal is wrong.
Well, I don't think it's wrong, but this isn't really surprising. I mean, we've talked on this space before about how these companies are going to start using other chips. We've already heard OpenAI confirm that they're going to be training on Microsoft's AI training chips. So I don't find it to be that surprising of development. You're right that long term it does pose a threat to the margins they've been seeing. And there's definitely going to be more players entering the market. I mean, it seems like their sort of customers want to get away from them really badly. And they're putting in efforts to do so, spending a lot of money to do so in many cases. But it's obviously not going to happen overnight. It's chipping away at it slowly. But are they going to have any trouble selling every Grace Blackwell DGX box they can this quarter or next quarter? Probably not. They have orders that are several times over what their supply is. So
Yeah,
does
they're
it
not going
pose
to
a
lose money.
long-term threat? Absolutely. Is it really going to make a difference in the next 2 to 4 quarters? Probably not materially so. I expect there's so much growth that you can bring on Amazon's chips, Microsoft's chips, Facebook's chips, Tesla's chips, and still see overall growth in training demand for NVIDIA's products as well.
Do you think that the stock market's going to react only after they see a decline in demand reported by NVIDIA? Or do you think the stock market is going to react when they realize maybe 100% of the market won't be owned by NVIDIA?
Look, I mean, they had their DGX conference last week. They booked out the whole stadium, the whole sports arena in San Francisco, and Jensen came up there. Everyone said, "Oh my God, Jensen Wong!" Like it's Britney Spears up there. Everyone has their stock tickers up, and he goes and he says, "Fortune 500s need our products because accelerated computing." And these guys are dumbasses. They don't know what they're doing. Your Coca-Colas of the world, your Charmin toilet paper. And they're probably just going to buy a lot of these products, these big companies, these startups. And if there's a cheaper alternative emerging, they'll realize it, but they're not going to realize it right now. They're going to realize it several quarters into the future, if not several years into the future. So there's a lot of inertia. Something like this, yes, it's absolutely real. It's absolutely happening. But I guess I just disagree about really the pace at which it happens.
Meta?
I think we just have a subjective disagreement. We will see what happens.
Well, we can make
You
that
don't wanna
subjective
argue your point?
disagreement. Hold on, we can make that. I think what you guys are disagreeing with really is, I mean, it looks like it's mostly the timing of these gross margins, operating margins coming down. But at the same time, I don't know exactly what your forecast is. Let's say 2-3 years, because I think Meta asked Omar the question before. What do you think will be the operating margin of NVIDIA a few years down the line? And Omar said 25%, 20-25%. So that's a major decline. And I think Meta agrees with that as well. I agree. Probably West agrees as well on that. And I guess we're just going to see how the stock market reacts to that, future that we all agree on, if that materializes.
Yeah,
I
but
think
I think one key difference was, and we can confirm it with Omar, that even though the margin was going to decline, demand was going to increase proportionally, or was it the case that demand would stay the same?
I think we all agree demand for NVIDIA's chips will increase, right, Meta?
I agree it could increase, but I don't think it'll increase proportionally. So if the margins are cut down by 3, I don't think the demand increases by 3.
I mean, even if it does, and your income stays the same, it's a major problem for the stock.
Or what? Is it 50%?
80.
The operating margin?
I think they said
Dude, I think they're
76% gross.
If you look historically, their operating margins, obviously it oscillates, some periods higher and some periods lower, but it's probably around like 25-30%. And I think it's kind of safe to maybe assume that
Dude, their net income margin is 49% right now.
Yeah, I know it's at a high point. I don't. No one's disputing that. I think it's just about like what is the long-term operating margin, net margin, whatever you want to say. And I doubt it's going to be 50%. It's probably going to, if you look at the charts, it'll probably go back to what it's kind of oscillated around, 25%, maybe 30. And then you just got to forecast out what you expect revenue growth is going to be. And if you expect the operating margin to go in half, will the revenue double in the next few years or not, or more? And if it doesn't double, then overall earnings are going to be flat, if not down, and then the stock will have to correct downwards.
If margins have and revenue double, your earnings are flat.
Yes.
Okay, this stock is trading at much higher multiples than what would justify that. Wes,
Well, wait 1 second.
by the way, that 49% net margin is a trailing 12-month margin. Okay, but finish your thought on that, Wes.
So you have to balance it on what are they generating right now in earnings, not 12 months ago. And the other thing is, though, if you're so afraid of the valuation in that way, you would also be fair to value Tesla the same way, who also has had declining margins, even though there's been a little bit of revenue growth and therefore earnings down overall. So Tesla has not fully corrected for that aspect because of the potential long-term growth. So Nvidia will be the same thing, but maybe handled differently. That if they, in 2 years from now, if they have flat earnings, it's really still going to be about what people are forecasting is going to happen 4 years later, a few years later. So we'll see.
Wes?
Yeah, I posted a link to NVIDIA's operating margin chart from 2010 to now, and it clearly is spiking, going straight up. The thing is that I think we can all agree that NVIDIA can only make a finite amount of chips, and then their look ahead, for creating new fabs or, increasing production or changing their roadmap, materially changing it. You can't do that instantaneously. That takes time. And so it seems like, they're having, I would assume, because I've been a part of it, these price negotiations for their chips, and that's why their operating margin is going way up. And so it seems like there's totally a deficit for their product right now, and they'll obviously keep increasing that. But like other products that are in crazy demand, especially for high-tech products, the market kind of dictates this price, this general supply and demand curve. So my thought is that unless we see something like major compete with NVIDIA, we're going to keep seeing this play out over the next couple of years. So I also posted a link to Meta's new chip, Artemis, which apparently is going to be in production or be used for production model training later this year. It'll be interesting to see what that is. But I think Google's history has kind of demonstrated that even though they have something that can train massive scale LLMs, they're still buying a crazy amount of NVIDIA chips for their data centers because their customers are not seeing the same kind of fruit. It's not bearing as much fruit for them. So they continue to demand NVIDIA chips in Google Cloud data centers. And that continues to be the material part of their business. Now, if that changes, then great. Or if Trainium changes that for Amazon, great. But that just hasn't materialized yet. So this path that
Well, I would argue that the Anthropic deal does change that today.
Yeah, it has to be played out over time. So Anthropic has to demonstrate production trained models on Trainium and then demonstrate that they did it at a certain price, or else other companies aren't going to come in and want to do this. Because I've been down this road with TPUs. So you have to demonstrate this value. And Amazon is currently saying, hey, come over here, like Omar was saying, because we're basically going to give it to you for free so that you can demonstrate that we do have a really good product and we do think people get value out of it. But it seems like they can't do that on their own. They need a high flying.
They're not, by the way, like this idea that Amazon's giving these away for free. I don't think that's accurate because
that's totally what's happening.
Hold on.
Yep.
Because Anthropic gave away equity share. That's not free. Why don't you go up to Anthropic and say, hey, I got chips, give me equity, and let's see what they say to you.
It's a trade-off, right? So they're trading off some amount of thing that they think is valuable, and then they're getting some amount of thing that's valuable.
Yeah, so but you said it's free, right? You said they're giving it away for free.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain it.
It's not for free. It might not be
Anyway.
a cash value, but it is still valued. They gave away 20% of their company, and this is a model that is on par with GPT-4. So it's not free. Meta.
Yeah, I was going to say the other way to look at this is the gross margins is what you're competing against, right? So it's not that Amazon needs Trainium to be as good as NVIDIA's chips. It's that Amazon's price at which they rent out NVIDIA chips, where they have margin on top of that, versus the price at which they rent out Trainium chips needs to be in favor of Trainium chips. In fact, the price that which you can get H100s anywhere in the cloud at the volume that you desire, and the uptime, the CDN, the APIs, all the other niceties, which people are willing to pay premiums for, right? Because when people buy cloud stuff on AWS, there's cheaper clouds out there, but there's those niceties that keep them there. That's the stuff that you need to compare. And Amazon being fully owning the chips can clearly price those at a lower margin than the NVIDIA chips if they wish. And similarly, I would say is the same case for Microsoft and Google.
I think, yeah. I mean, this is very material in my opinion, but like at it, at a minimum, this says to me, Anthropic engineers who are obviously very knowledgeable, experienced, their track record of creating this LLM that competes with ChatGPT-4 matters. They're current in their knowledge. They see the product pipeline on the NVIDIA, etc. They agreed to this deal to using these chips. And to go back to what Omar was saying, the fact that Google is still buying NVIDIA chips doesn't mean they're going to a year from now. So I'm not seeing the demand for NVIDIA 5-10 years down the line at the level that the stock is pricing today. Maybe I should do a DCF on this company to kind of illustrate my point a little bit more.
I just can't believe that there is some quote expert investors who are on the spaces who didn't like that I brought up that NVIDIA's historical operating margins were not 40%. And then that person blocked me just because they're wrong.
There's no reason to just make it personal. No reason to make it personal.
I assume it was somebody in the audience. It could have been for other reasons, Machine. Your eye is pretty intimidating.
They're not in the audience right now. They're not in the audience. I don't think. They might be anonymous or whatever, but doesn't matter. I really want to avoid personal drama. I'll pick your drama at the request to speak button.
That's why I dumped your mom, so we didn't have any drama.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Did you see? Never mind. I will let you finish the topic.
Yeah, I mean, this company, I don't really have much to say, but their net margin, trailing 12-month net margin is 49%. Operating margin is above 50. So if it's trailing 12 months and their margins have been going up, obviously, their quarterly margins are going to be much higher. And the stock is not priced for those margins to continue for 10 years, but it's priced for not much of a decline. So, and it's priced for very substantial revenue growth combined with higher than average S&P 500 average tech margins. So I think both of those metrics are going to disappoint. The revenue growth forecast and the margin forecast will disappoint. But we have Bradford in here. I know he's an NVIDIA investor. If he wants to come up and chat as well, please welcome. Machine, do you have any investments in this space?
No, right now I'm just short arm a bit. And if SMCI goes up near 1200, I will be short that too.
So you closed your super micro short and then open the arm shorts?
No, I already had arm shorts.
Are you still thinking about shorting one of these companies?
Honestly, I don't think I want to do a lot of specific stock trades. I think it's good for mental exercise, but not good for emotional health.
Okay. Bradford, welcome to the speaker board. Do you still have your NVIDIA investments?
Yeah, we cut it in half earlier this year, around like 7:30 or something like that. I think it's worth $1,000 a share easy, and if you buy into the $2 trillion TAM of accelerated compute, over the next 6-7 years, then it's worth maybe 1,300 today. So I think it's fair, but like the sentiment is just out of control. And this story that Holmar's picked up on, Amazon has some decent chips, AMD has some decent chips. I disagree with Machine. He does have long arms, but that's a bad joke. Sorry. Don't kick me off the stage, please.
Your
But
mom said I had long something.
Yeah. I don't really have many thoughts beyond that right now. I do think there's some competition. I agree with the risk that inference compute can be really stripped down, so you don't need you know, all the machinery for the inference. You can just really get small models and strip your inference down by like 20 to 50 to 100 times. So I think there's some risks that people don't appreciate, and also like people are forgetting that they're forgetting the NVIDIA cycle. So NVIDIA has new chips every 2 to 4 years, and when this happens, sometimes they can get Osborne, and NVIDIA is on the hook to pay out to their suppliers when they need them to like stop making chips. I think in 2022 they had to pay out over $1 billion to, I think it's TSMC, to just stop making the 3000 series graphics cards and to dial back the A100s. So like there's some definite risks, but it's growing profits, growing margins. Like that's what investors want to see, and they want to see stuff flow through to earnings. That's why Tesla is suffering, and probably one of the most hated stocks in the S&P 500, except for Boeing. Yeah, and Boeing's literally got like planes falling apart. It's like Tesla's more hated than that almost.
Thank you, Bradford. So let me just get this straight. So we have Meta, who was considering maybe riding calls or buying puts or whatever in one of the chips. We have Wes, chip makers. We have Wes, who has a position in NVIDIA. Omar has a position in NVIDIA. Bradford has a position in NVIDIA. And Machine has a short on ARM. And nobody is changing their positions because of this investment or what it implies, right?
I think the market is just got so much premium baked in that the market's saying it could go up a lot or go down a lot. And so it's not that I'm not more confident, it's just that I don't want to take any risk.
I do think this is all like with Nvidia. I think it's hard to predict, it's hard to forecast. Last May I was working with Matt Smith and then the other person, Tony Hutton, who really turned me on to NVIDIA. And they were much lower than I was. And I was just looking at, what management was saying and extrapolating. And my valuation for $1,000 a share is just, I think they're going to do up to $50 a share in earnings next year. Maybe it's only 40. And if you assign a 20 or 25 multiple to that, just being conservative, knowing that NVIDIA has these cycles, like I think that's like a fair price, but like the sentiment is just insane. We had a client who reached out to us last week who they want like 10% of their money in Bitcoin suddenly. And it's all about like FOMO. It's about chasing momentum. And I think that's risky. Um, I believe in this vision for accelerated compute at the data center. So like I happen to think that NVIDIA is still cheap, but I think the sentiment is just out of hand. So what
Would you
do you
tell?
think?
Would
What
you
do you
tell
think
that
we're
client?
missing?
I'll tell you in a second. What would you tell that client out of curiosity, if you can share?
We have a follow-up meeting scheduled, but like this client happens to have some need for like some home renovation or some spending in the home, and we've suggested they use some Bitcoin they already have for that, and they don't want to do that. And this goes to a point a problem I have with crypto is like people say, well, crypto is going to be used for transactions, but people who believe in it the most, all they want to do is hodl it, and they want to use their fiat for
Yeah, they see it as a cash
transactions.
equivalent. That's amazing. I mean, I guess you can just show them like volatility. And anyway, let me ask you this: what is your estimate for Nvidia's EPS for 2026?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So my estimate for 2025, we'll get to 26 in a second. I think it should easily be $40 a share. They're gonna do 25 this year. Pretty sure about that. Their supply is gonna double toward the end of this year. So it's called chip on wafer on substrate. This supply is gonna double. But I don't think their earnings are just gonna double when their supply doubles. So their operating expenses aren't going up that much. They're not like making billionaires out of their salespeople. So I think $40 a share is fair for 2025. Um, I have no idea for how much supply is going to grow for NVIDIA after this. But I would assume something like a 40% growth from there in the following year. So I'd be at something like, if you had to pin me down, something like $56 a share.
Machine's mom allowed me to pin her down for $56. But yeah, interesting. I'll keep that in mind. Okay, $56 per share. I wish, man. Thank you, Bradford, for sharing your forecast. And as an investor, obviously, your forecast carries more weight. I wish that we had more analysts in this
yeah, you
space
could,
with a specific forecast on NVIDIA.
yeah,
But, yeah.
you can tell I'm guessing, and like I don't think like the Wall Street analysts have a clue either.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say the same thing. I think a lot of people are in the same boat with you on NVIDIA's 2026 bottom line with what you said. Yeah.
I have
Meta,
a question.
Oh,
Never mind.
I'm just gonna make a
Meta
quick
and that
comment,
machine.
and then I have to drop soon afterwards. The thing I would watch for to make me more bullish on this is you see Grok came out and they used Jax. Jax is not using CUDA. The more things we see from like Anthropic and these big manufacturers who must not be using CUDA because they're not tied to NVIDIA, the more you see AI libraries moving over off of CUDA and the lock-in that CUDA has, the less I am, the more bullish I would be on the idea that NVIDIA is going to fall faster than expected.
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry, machine.
There's already a lot of cloud providers that don't have NVIDIA. And as customers start using libraries like OpenAI, Llama, various other things, Grok just came out and it's built on JAX, which does not use CUDA. So it's not locked into CUDA. As more popular AI libraries come out that customers are using that don't require CUDA, those customers won't be going to cloud providers demanding NVIDIA because that's the only thing that they can run their stuff on. I think that's the leading indicator for when NVIDIA chips aren't going to be purchased by the big cloud providers. At some point, when that demand wanes, they don't need to have those chips anymore.
Yes. Okay, machine.
I just wanted to add, I think Bradford makes good points about why there could be upside to NVIDIA, and Meta makes some good points why there could be some downside to NVIDIA. You make no point.
Hold on, just 1 second. The point that Bradford made is, are you talking about the 2025 EPS estimates and the PE multiple, or did I miss something?
Correct.
Okay.
But I don't think NVIDIA is a clear investment right now in either direction. I think if you think there's downside to the AI hype, that there's other companies with more glaring overvaluations. For instance, ARM, which isn't the same thing as NVIDIA, and I'm not fully aware on, I use ARM core, M4, M3, these things go in a lot of embedded devices for inference. So that may have a different market exactly than NVIDIA, but they're currently valued at $130 billion and their yearly revenue is less than 3. So they're at a 40x multiple of revenue. So I find that to be a little better play if you think there's too much hype in the market right now. As for NVIDIA, that's something I'd simply wait to see what's happening on future earnings reports to get better insight on their forecast. And especially if you wanted to short it, I would wait until there's some hint.
Well, the thing is, but if you're going to say those things, you have to say the other side, like risks to that, which is, for example, ARM has 8% short interest. Okay, so more of a short squeeze risk than NVIDIA. And I'm guessing, I didn't check, but their implied volatility is probably higher. So don't push your book. Bradford?
We also don't know how big the initial ramp is going to be for AMD with the 300X or whatever it's called. I'd be a little concerned about that. How big is that initial ramp going to be? Because that doesn't show up in the current revenues. It doesn't show up in the current earnings, and it's just getting started.
What doesn't specifically show up? Can you say it again?
So I don't know if it's the 300IX or whatever it is, but that AMD has for AI data center.
But he was talking about ARM. He's talking about ARM, not AMD.
Oh, yeah, I mean about AMD. So we don't know how big that is. That big initial push. So you're shorting ARM. Okay. I was thinking AMD, sorry. My brain's all
there's quite a few companies that are kind of riding this AI type wave. And the way I kind of look at it is NVIDIA is like the Tesla of the space. And then let's say AMD, I mean, I don't want to pick another company, but there's a bunch of Rivians and then there's a bunch of beam fests. And Tesla had in 2022, Tesla had some margin, like high margins, and I didn't see those margins coming down at the time. But I was wrong. The interest rates going up did bring the margins down, and with price cuts and everything throughout 2023. And I suspect a similar thing will happen to Nvidia. And the company is going to stick around. The margins are going to be healthy, but I think the valuation is all stretched for Nvidia. And then there's a bunch of Rivians and VinFast, like I said, and those will go to zero. So, yeah, I mean, as Machine pointed out, maybe there are better options to short and buy puts or right calls or what have you. But all have their own risks. Like the short squeeze potential is higher with a stock like ARM because it has 8% for interest, whereas Nvidia has only 2-3% for interest. So yeah, it depends. Every strategy has its own risks.
I got a question for Machine. So, like, what's the story on ARM as it comes to AI? Like, why are people excited about ARM?
I don't think I'm fully an expert on this. I mean, my position for the ARM is not, it's not like that large. It might be like 5% of my portfolio. But I think ARM is at least heavily involved in a lot of compute chips for inference on embedded devices. So, for instance, a lot of smartwatches or wearables use ARM chips for simple computation. I'm sure they have all their suite of maybe hardware that they sell. So, if there's an AI boom and people are thinking there's going to be growth in use of these AI tools and inference on various embedded devices, that ARM chips are going to be used more and more, which I think is a reasonable assumption. So I'm not bashing ARM as in like I think they're not going to grow. I just think the valuation is way ahead of their revenue, let alone they don't make any money yet. And many startups, of course, that can survive for a long time on that, as long as there's huge revenue growth. But right now, I think there's a bit of too much hype. So it could be wrong. It's not a long-term play.
Yeah. I'm also curious about you guys' thoughts on, before I go to Wes, because I do want to get the opinion on Dell as well. I caught some article on Dell to seeking off, and they took 2 days to approve it. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, Wes.
Bradford, I think your question was directed at what does ARM have in like the AI chip race? Is that correct?
Yeah, or just like, why are people excited about ARM?
Oh, gotcha. The highest level that I can say is that ARM licenses their architecture to many companies, like including Apple, and that's how Apple builds their chips on top of that licensing. And then pretty much every phone has an ARM chip in it, and those ARM chips that are in it are licensed architecture. Like Samsung makes them, and Dell Google does as well. So it's basically every chip that's in every phone. And then they also these ARM architectures have various different kinds of AI hardware built into them. So like the ARM Cortex M55 is something that has deeply embedded linear algebra compute matrices, things like that. But this is kind of the highest level that I can talk to about it. But at the end of the day, they are very much in the AI race. So like when your phone does some type of AI compute, like very little inference, that can be done locally and use very little power. So your phone can last a lot longer because it's doing it natively on the device and it doesn't need a connection to the internet. Those types of things are what ARM enables. I hope that helps.
Omar?
So ARM is kind of like the opposite of TSMC. They're a very interesting company. They're a British company, and what they do is they design CPUs, and they will sell you the design for their CPU, and you can take their design, and then you can then fabricate a chip of your own that's an ARM chip or an ARM compatible chip. There's a lot of ARM chips on the market. So why does this matter? Well, it's because, originally it was only sort of low end chips. It was used in mobile phones. But then when the iPhone started running on ARM and Apple ported OS 10 to run on ARM, and it just became an increasingly widely used platform for high end computing as well. So, iPhones using it, iPads. Now I'm sitting here in front of a MacBook Pro, which has an Apple Silicon ARM based architecture. So because the instruction set, right? It's a fairly well understood instruction set. You can get Linux on ARM, you can get OS 10 on ARM. Even Microsoft now makes Windows for ARM. And they have, compatibility layers and stuff to run that. You can virtualize Intel and that kind of stuff. And also in the data center, people are increasingly using ARM in the data center because it's low cost. NVIDIA, for example, has solutions that they have their Blackwell GPUs combined with their Grace CPUs, and their Grace CPUs are an ARM architecture. So NVIDIA is putting ARM CPU designs into their products, but really they're one of many. So anyone can use these ARM designs and license them. You just go pay ARM and you pay the licensing fee. I think it's a per product sold licensing fee. So you basically give them a little royalty on, essentially every iPhone that's sold, every NVIDIA system that's sold, they get a little piece of that. So just like TSMC is focused exclusively on manufacturing the chip and they don't actually care what the design is, ARM is focused on making the design of the chip and not actually manufacturing it. So with these two companies together, you found a lot of companies like Apple, for example, they said, okay, we want to go get into making chips. Well, let's go get a design we can license from ARM for a CPU that's a fairly well understood instruction set and go to TSMC. They're the best at making chips. And boom, just like that, we've got a world class CPU. So, there may be a little bit of overexcitement there, but they're definitely a company that's ubiquitous. Probably pretty much everybody in this room is using an ARM processor to engage in this conversation we're having.
All right. Francisco, do you have any thoughts on this?
I have this conversation actually just yesterday with my fiance, and I think ARM. I know there's a lot of other topics discussed, but I think ARM is truly something that should be invested more in. That more companies should be building under their architecture, and that just the cost savings alone, the improved energy efficiency, and every other benefit that comes with it, I think that it's something that's
Are
a lot more impactful than we realize.
are semiconductors part of your usual pillow talk with your fiance?
Yeah, I'm kind of I work with software. She worked with hardware. She builds her own PCs. I work on programs for it. So we kind of work and combine with that. But yeah, no, we talk about a lot of tech stuff. We talk about Neuralink. We talk about SpaceX. A lot of that stuff.
I like that line. I work with software. She works with hardware. Hey yo. No, that's cool. That's cool. This has been helpful. I'd say, machine, to get back to your short arm. Um, yeah, price of sales is very high with ARM, but when you look at the revenue, their cost of revenue is very low. So it's but they have to do all the R&D to get that revenue. So like their gross margins super high, but then they have uh very high R&D expense. So like it's not dropping to the bottom line. Um I think it's interesting. It's kind of like it's kind of in a way like Amazon, where they had all this R&D that got expensed and they kept reinvesting back in their R&D, and then eventually the profits flow through. Um but like you know, it's not like ARM can just turn off the R&D. I do agree with Tesla Scope. Like it's a very efficient architecture, and we need to transition over to it if as much as we can for sure. I do think like the whole embedded hardware for AI. Yeah, I think we might be over our skis on that. They talk about AI at the edge and all that. I think you do need powerful chips for that, and probably ARM is leaned on for that a lot, and your ASICs, and maybe Wes, you could talk a little bit about, or someone else can, about these chips that need to go into the humanoid robots, and I'm guessing there's ARM designs in there, but for a while we're going to have a limited number of robots. Not like we'll suddenly have millions like tomorrow, but we will in a few years, I think.
The Optimus will require a few trip chips that will require kind of like smaller microprocessors. I doubt that they're ARM, but they're probably just more generic tiny microprocessors to run the actuators. And then it will require potentially an AMD chip, kind of like what a vehicle has to run the infotainment board. So most likely it'll have a chip like that, and they'll probably be in lockstep, so there'll be two of them. So I don't think it's going to be heavily loaded with, higher end ARM chip type things. I don't think that they'll. Potentially they might not license ARM at all for Optimus. Is maybe the better point you're looking for.
Tesla Scope, any news today? What's going on today?
There's a lot going on today, and I have to jump out just a second, but yeah, we have full self-driving version 12.3, 12.3.2 and 12.3.2.1 going out to all new vehicles, with the exception of the Model 3 so far. I kind of hinted that we would see the Model 3 taking a little bit longer to be able to get out, but we're working on that. I even expect for us to see that probably within the next few days. Pretty much the entire company is heavily focused right now. All engineers are focused on getting version 12 out to every single vehicle within the next next week or so. I would say, I want to say this week, and there's a very good chance that a lot of vehicles are going to be moved to version 12 this week, but I wouldn't say all vehicles. But things are happening and things are in motion. Things are happening very quickly. People are enjoying the new vehicle, especially having pretty much almost instant access to the newest builds of full self-driving. And I think that shows more than anything just the overall confidence that Tesla has going forward with this.
Omar, we have a question that replies. Lance Webb asks, does FSD 12 automatic set speed offset speed automatic ignore relative speed limit settings? It does look like the profile.
It only looks at the profile. So yeah, it does ignore your offset. It only looks at whether you have chill, average, or assertive on. And it sets its speed itself based on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Bradford.
I have some VIN data for everyone. I don't know if this is representative, but I am taking delivery on a Cybertruck on Friday, and the VIN is in the 3800s.
Yeah, Troy has been talking about VINs rising exponentially on Cybertruck as well. Machine, I'm sure you've seen this. What do you think?
Well,
Yeah, I think
we
super
had
exponential even.
unbelievable. And you had blast the super exponential. one day you all learn.
I pinned Troy's post at the top of the screens.
You know, Troy is probably one person who would understand what an exponential is and super exponential. Maybe I should talk to him sometime. I think definitely is obviously a significant ramp in Cybertruck production. I am curious to see exactly where it ends up. And I guess the next time we'll know. They're not gonna. I guess are they gonna list? They'll list out Cybertruck included with Model S and X, perhaps on the deliveries report. So maybe someone like Troy could back out S and X deliveries, try to approximate how many are due to Cybertruck. We saw there's also the tweet from Joe Tegmeyer. He thinks that Tesla is nearing 900 to 1,000 a day. But I would still trust Troy a bit more with the VIN data, who I think is estimating maybe 400 a day now. But he's probably delayed versus what Joe Tegmeyer is seeing. So I don't know. Maybe it's like 500 a day now. That's still pretty good. So I mean that's if they can get to obviously everyone thinks about the 1,000 a day mark as a great barrier, right, to achieve. So I expect that will happen in Q2. I don't think that's a very out there bet.
I sent Troy a reply. If he wants to come up and tell us about it, he's welcome to do so. Xander?
Oh, I got to beat Bradford. I have a VIN that was issued yesterday, and it starts with a 5. So it's very, very low, 5,000.
I got a pro tip for you, Xander. Now,
Go for it.
so Dirty Tesla,
he some pro tip.
Yeah, Dirty Tesla, he paid for his Cybertruck. It still took a month for him to get a delivery date. But I canceled my trade-in, and then I was able to pay for it. And then it was like 3-4 days that I got a delivery date.
Oh no, I got a delivery date. It's set to tomorrow, but I changed it to Friday morning, and I'm not trading in. I'm gonna sell my Model Y, probably to X users.
Nice, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations to you as well.
So mine's gonna be the second one delivered in Indiana, and I'm thinking of having a party with the Tesla Owners Club.
Do it.
Xander, what else is on your radar? Are you excited about Optimus? Anything else other than your Cybertruck delivery?
Yeah, I mean the Cybertruck delivery came out of nowhere. I had a glitch in my account where it was set to Massachusetts, and I fixed that this Sunday. Back to Texas, and then on Tuesday I got the VIN. So that's been the focus. And with house, I'm literally right now in the garage about to run my electrical for the level 2 charger. So stay low profile in the meantime. Just watching the stock. Not selling any calls. I'm afraid it's going to run. So although Q1 deliveries might. That's the expectation. I imagine Q1 deliveries are going to put a damper.
Oh, machine. Are you on the desktop?
Correct.
Okay, we have 3 people who follow the stock price pretty closely and use option strategies. If you guys want to kind of talk about it a little bit, you're welcome to do so.
I would just say Xander is, as we know, mentally weak. And as soon as the stock price moves up, he's afraid. Which is not the worst thing, to be conservative so you don't lose all your money. Something I know about. Well, not all, but you know what I mean. But what I would say is now, FSD beta coming out. Everyone saw me in an FSD beta V12.3 car getting excited. And so they're all buying calls because, if the machine's excited, then we really know this is something. So, but those people are retail investors, small crumbs right now, and that's moving the stock up. But go back and tell me any quarter on which Tesla has terrible deliveries and terrible earnings, and the stock price moves up, unless it was due to some third exterior event like the Shanghai shutdown in 2020, right? Okay, that's different. No, it doesn't happen. So like, I'm not worried that the stock price is going to run up from here significantly. And I'm just talking over the next month. I'm saying it's either going to be flat or down. And then at that time, that's when I'm hoping to get back in bigly. Because I do think they, at some point, I think the price pressure downwards has to cease. And I think we're getting toward that point in the spring. And that's ultimately when I think things will rebound upward. And then obviously on top of that, you have FSD beta progress and getting some people to hype that up over the next year. So I just think over the next month, I'm not.
Is there an end to your
The
monologue?
end is the stock price is going down.
People checked out halfway through what you're saying.
Fine. The
Just
stock
break
price
this a little bit. You will get the mic again, machine. Like you kind of hog this mic sometimes. There's no tomorrow.
I've been holding my joke to respond to him, which is not a joke. I saw you in FSD, and I bought 150 strike puts for next week.
Really?
I mean, just a little insurance, nothing insane, but but yeah, you see the hype, and then all of a sudden it flies up, and that there's an acute dislocation between what Wall Street is, the delivery numbers that they're saying, and what Troy and the basement dwellers are saying. So the stock is gonna go what 10%, like, if there's that much of a difference, do we not think that there's going to be this push down right after? And I think what
So
Machine just said.
when do your put options expire?
Just on April 5th, just the next Friday.
Okay, so just for the PND report. Okay, Bradford, what do you think about Xander's weekly put options as insurance for the production deliveries report?
I think it's an interesting idea. If I were to be betting on that report, so that comes out on Tuesday, right? Tuesday morning. So then I typically think that the short-term reactions to the stock can live for several days. We've heard about the 3-day rule. It seems like if you have an announcement for earnings on a Wednesday night, the stock peaks out, like it just soars, tends to peak out on, like Monday morning. I'm just seeing that a lot with like Nvidia, Tesla, other big reactions to events. So, having Friday expiration, give himself those 3 days. It's an interesting idea, and I wonder. I wouldn't be surprised if the public reacts to a huge discrepancy in the number, and I wouldn't put it past the media to say that the consensus is like 460,000 or something stupid like that. I feel like at times we're privy to secrets on X, and like version 12.3 is another secret. And I think that'll be something that'll benefit us down the road.
Yeah,
Xander, no hands mode.
Yeah, I just want
to. If you raise your hand, Machine will jump in and just kind of keep talking.
So this actually, Machine's gonna like it because it confirms what he just stated. We had on Tuesday someone that's in the finance world. I know that doesn't mean much to most people, but like 20 years experience, stating the same thing, that they anticipate low 400s. They have put positions, and they're looking for that downward move to close their position, and then start rebuilding and going long. So if you have multiple people kind of or in the finance world angling at that, um, with FSD here, and we know it, but the broad market doesn't really know it. Um, so I think that that's why I'm afraid to sell calls, and even though I just did today, but not the point. Go ahead.
David Klassen. David, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. Machine.
So by the way, this stupid desktop app, there's no hand waving for me, or I can't see if anyone else is raising their hand. So I apologize for being rude. Everyone knows I'm not a rude person, so it's just an accident. But Xander, I mean, you're reckless, basically. You're a degenerate, gambling on 1 week expiration puts. I bought 150 strike puts, but it's for January 2025. And just in the case that it does move down a bit, which I do am betting on, I guess, whether it's P&D report or possibly after earnings. But I don't want to hold that for a long time. So, because I agree with you that there's kind of two time frames at battle here. One is the short-term time frame, which if Tesla reports deliveries less than what they had a year ago, the media narrative on top of that will carry out that the company is shrinking. It is not growing anymore. They're going to say the growth story's over. All this stuff put a lot of fear in the market. Some people are going to pull out, and I do expect the stock price to go lower on that. And it seems like that's going to happen, having deliveries about flat or lower than a year ago. But we'll see. That could be wrong. And yeah, at the same time, I just like these people. I'm like, well, but if it gets down to 150, you're kind of getting at least in a reasonable range that you could expect even moderate earnings growth in 2025 to be valued where the stock can be valued over 200. If you're down at 150 and you think the fair value is over 200, with some leaps, that's not a bad return on investment. So I expect like a V shape movement over like 2 months, basically, where it dips down on all this fear, and if especially if earnings are bad. So we'll see.
Okay. We have a question for Bradford from Marty T. When will Wall Street get excited about mega pack revenue?
I'll say when it's not being canceled out by the auto business. And we still need to see Lathrop really expanding into their capacity. We talk about infinite demand for mega packs. They're definitely needed with solar and wind farms yesterday. But Lathrop was at like 40% production for a very long time, and still, even when we checked in January, it was that way. But we weren't there for a day. We just were there for a little bit. Yeah, things have changed at Lathrop, and they've added a second ramp. They've added 3 more conveyors to convey the mega packs all the way to the door of the factory. They have, I don't know, 6 straddle loaders now, those red things that pick them up and move them about the parking lot. They're now loading them in that outlot. They no longer load them inside that small parking lot, have these big traffic jams. So they're getting ready for increased production. I'm hoping we see it soon. And I'm really curious to see what margins are going to be like. I know I've said it a lot of times, but I have a hard time seeing how margins are below 50% right now. Just where's the cost? If you look at the batteries at $100 a kilowatt hour, you look at maybe some atrocious costs for the inverters, the power electronic equipment. I still struggle to see how one of these costs $750,000 to make. and they're selling them for 1.3 to 1.5 million when you order in a decent size that these mega pack farms are being put on.
Thank you. David Clausen, are you ready to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I forgot to turn my mic on last time. Sorry about that. I'm curious, when is is Tesla planning to give Canadians a free 1 month trial for full self-driving? I'd really like to try it out.
Omar?
Yes.
There you go.
And what Omar is basing that on is partially Rohan Patel come out and said that they're going to give Canada all the same things that they're giving the U.S. So I would assume that would include a trial as well.
Okay, thank you. I just hadn't heard about that, and I was kind of wanting to use it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, when I can't hear Omar, I'm going to drop down. If you want, I'll come back.
Okay.
So David, I don't know if you're in an area with streetcars.
David is in listening mode. He's in listening mode.
Okay. Well, I did want to say something about Canada. I know they had geofenced against some area and where there were streetcars in Canada, and I just drove it in Sacramento with streetcars, and it seemed to be fine. I know it's a different animal in some parts of Canada, but seemed to be doing good.
Good. Bradford, I want to ask you. Actually, we have a lot of Canadians. Maybe we should focus on all of it. David wants to come up. David, if you can request to speak again, you're welcome to come up and talk a little bit more about FSD in Canada, or any other Canadians who have questions about FSD in Canada. I know it's a hot topic right now. I know it's been frustrating. David?
Yeah, just we have a 2019 Model 3. We've been to West Coast, East Coast. We were in Texas for the delivery event. We never got to go inside the plant, but we were at the Cybertruck, well, the event they had at I forget the bar there, but we met some nice people in that, and we really love our Tesla. It's the best car I've ever had. I've got 175,000 kilometers on it by now, and yeah, so I never did buy full self-driving. I didn't see the value in it at that time yet.
All right, thank you, David. If any other questions about FSD in Canada, please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to switch topics. And I want to ask Bradford his thoughts on an earlier topic that we discussed about the Baltimore bridge collapse. Ford CFO mentioned that their supply chain is getting hurt because of that. Secretary Janet Yellen is putting together a task force to understand what's happening and maybe take some action. Are you worried as a Tesla investor about this?
I'm not, but I haven't thought about what parts Tesla is sending to Europe. I think the biggest obvious hit is the S and X that are getting shipped to Europe from the US. But I haven't thought through all the other parts that might be going out to Europe. Tesla has been working pretty hard to localize their supply chain in Europe. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'm not that worried overall. It's wild that it happened and tragic. I do think there'll be an impact to the U.S. economy. There are other ports out there, but in order to divert to those ports, you guys said a bunch of trucks or trains to those other spots. And I'm guessing those ports aren't ready for all the action that Baltimore has been doing.
Got it. Any other thoughts, comments, questions about any topics? Please request to speak.
As insurance, I just submitted my Cybertruck second reservation in case something goes wrong.
Great. Omar, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
A friend of mine just texted, and I know this person. So says through her network, there's someone that is on the Make a Wish Foundation list, and their wish is a Cybertruck. Currently on the wait list, but it's a 16-year-old boy who is super sick with cancer and is in ICU. Parents are wanting to buy a Cybertruck, but obviously sooner rather than later. And she's asking for advice on what's the best way to kind of approach that.
I think they did bump someone else with cancer up the list, so I'm sure they could probably just try and get in contact with Tesla and they would do that. The other option would be to get 3 referrals, but that is probably not something the Make-A-Wish Foundation wants to do. So I'd probably reach out to like Rohan Patel or like some of the employees on Twitter and just try and get them in contact with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I'm sure they can bump up that order.
Okay, thank you. Carl,
Yeah, I just wanted to share an experience that I just had driving FSD 12.3. I was making a Starbucks run and I had to make a U-turn because they screwed up my order. But I was at a stoplight, a double left turn. I was on the left lane, and the traffic that I was going into, it basically, I had a couple of cars in front of me, couldn't make it through the light, and the car realized that it was stuck in the intersection and was able to maneuver around into the right lane, even though shortly after I had to make a left, which is the lane it wanted to be in. But it was just very natural, human-like, maneuvering that it did. I was shocked that it did that.
thank you, Carl, for sharing. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing all right. As some of you know, I'm dealing with a Model Y, one of the earliest Model Ys that had its actually second battery failure, and this time it's outside of warranty. So I'm just, I'm being a bit of a test dummy here, trying to get the battery fixed and dealing with that.
All right. So how is that experience going for you?
Yeah. So I mean, super high level. It's got 130,000 miles, just under 130,000 miles on it. For those that don't know, I share all my cars on Turo right now, and they do get supercharged a lot. You could call it, abuse. They get effectively. I don't tell them they can't charge above 80%. I don't tell them they can't supercharge. I let them, experience a Tesla just like you would if you were an owner on a road trip. So yeah, as a result, super early VIN. I've had this car. One of my only other car. Oh, I've only had one other car ever have a battery failure at all, but this one's actually already on its second battery. And yeah, basically, looking at Tesla, asked them for a little bit of forgiveness. It's outside of 120,000 miles. Anything you can do? They said no. We could put a new battery in, or we could reman this battery for like $13,000. And I was like, ooh,
Is that
that's
a
a bit.
standard range or a long range? Because the long
It's a
ranges
long.
usually have 150,000.
Yeah, at least everything that I looked up, and I really hope that you're the right one in this argument or this point, is that it was only to 120,000. I think that was actually the
If you
case
look
for
at
all.
the Tesla app and you scroll to the bottom, it has warranty information at the bottom. The other
Okay.
thing is, usually when you get a battery replacement, you have a new warranty that starts from the time of the replacement. So you might want to
Yep.
check out that as well.
Yeah, you're correct on that second point for sure. Except for the battery was replaced at just 45,000 miles. So the additional 50,000 miles, which happens kind of within that other warranty, basically didn't end up extending my warranty at all. It just kind of inserted itself in the existing warranty. So,
Xander. Xander.
Ryan, I got a question for you, and I
yeah,
don't know if you want to finish the thought that you wanted to finish. So I'm going to get a Cybertruck. And I also have a Model Y. I'm debating putting it on Turo. I know you just had an issue with the Cybertruck accident or something, and then it's been delayed. Do you think it's worth managing the fleet of the two cars and doing that in a little bit outside of Austin area?
Yeah, let me. I'll just wrap up the rest of my current Model Y story. Is basically I just brought it to EV's Republic out here in Sacramento, who basically said they should be able to get it repaired. They believe for somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5, unless then you do a full battery replacement. In which case, I'm back in like the 12, 13 grand area. So, yep, basically just hoping to do this for as responsibly priced as possible, and then I'll decide whether or not to keep Turoing it, which is actually if I get it, especially if I get it replaced, I might as well just keep it because it's a great car otherwise. And then yeah, that kind of leads towards the point that you were just asking about, like what would you do with cars? With my older Model Ys, I'm still renting them out. They're generally still doing well. I'm, not phenomenally well. I don't necessarily recommend that people buy a large quantity of new vehicles to host them at based on last year's data. But the prior 2 years, I was making actually pretty good money car sharing, and the market is picking back up on Teslas as the prices are starting to go back up. I think the Elon negativity is starting to fade away a little bit in the rental market as well. So generally, I do recommend car sharing over the long haul if you can afford some of that risk. And yeah, I mean, Cybertruck.
Ryan, what's starting to say you said about Elon?
I don't know, obviously, the exact source of the reduced demand over the last year, but as the prices of the cars came down, as well as kind of the general sentiment on Elon went down, I did have some people cancel, even specifically mentioning that their partner, their spouse, didn't want to be in a Tesla because of Elon. So there's a mix of things obviously affecting the demand.
And you're
But
seeing the reversal of that?
I'm not necessarily seeing a reversal, but I'm seeing higher demand, and I'm not hearing any of those mentions like I did. I heard like 2 or 3 mentions last year where someone had a booking with a Tesla and canceled specifically because of Elon.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense. And this is interesting because we've been talking about a year mark so it would align with that. But interesting data point. Keep going.
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, my long story short is if you already have a car and you're considering whether or not to sell it, I generally suggest people try it out. Take plenty of high quality photos before each rental because that's really the main way that you could get in a bad situation is if you haven't well documented the car. Especially what I tell people is like take everything you can see, you should be able to see twice. Because they'll say, oh, that was just the way the light was refracting, or it already was scratched. You just can't tell from that image. So if you already have cars, I encourage it. Turo is a great option, but we think we can do better with Dispatch, but that's a whole different company, and I don't want to pitch people that don't want to hear it. But in the future, we're going to launch our own platform to compete with Turo.
David Katz, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Ryan, you have so much experience and we appreciate your comments. I'm just one Tesla owner and we like to hear the long-term effects. My question is, you are probably aware that sometimes what shows up as a battery failure is maybe one cell or 1 or 2 cells. And there are companies, I think at least in the Pacific Northwest, that will analyze a battery and see if that is the issue and have a repair that is not as expensive. Have you looked into that?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I clarified well enough earlier, but yes, that's exactly what I'm doing with EV's Republic.
Yeah.
I literally am on the road back from Sacramento. I'm just passing through Davis after dropping off my car at a place that does exactly that.
Good luck with that. I'm hoping for the best.
Thank you. Yeah, I could definitely use the money right now because I just bought the Cybertruck a month and a half ago. I just bought a Model 3 Highland with the intent to sell this car, and now with all this, I'm like, oh, this is expenses I wasn't expecting. So we'll have to see. But I'm a little bit tighter on cash than I'd like to be right now.
Does it give you concern that, your battery replacement is always remanufactured, or is it just random and the luck of the draw?
I mean, it definitely gives me like a little bit of pause. I think, revisiting this experience now, this is like, again, the third battery failure I've had of sorts. Like, it's, as you're saying, it is often just a cell or even the attachment of a cell to the rest of the module. that takes down the whole module. So it does give me a little bit. I would like some degree of that residual value of the pack or of the remaining modules that are good. If I end up having Tesla put in a new pack or pay effectively that price, I would love for my old pack or those old modules to be something that I could buy or again, sell to some other kind of recycling program to use for home storage. So I'm kind of considering how deep do I want to chase this rabbit hole down. I might end up with a somewhat failed pack that I try to do something fun with. So again, a little tighter on cash than I'd like to be. So I don't know if I should invest my time and energy in that. But I'm just kind of fascinated by the fact that there's a lot of value still in this pack. It still goes 200 miles to a charge, just not the 280 I was getting a couple weeks ago.
All right. Wait, so you can still drive it?
So I was still able to drive it. The interesting thing was after a couple of drives, it stopped accepting charges. But I basically, because I knew I had to get to Sacramento, I didn't try anything crazy. Once it got kind of below 50%, it may have been able to charge again, but I just brought it straight to EVs Republic and didn't try to recharge it. So again, I think it's just a failed module and that the battery management system. Oh, I'm looking at a Tesla Semi passing me the opposite direction. I think it's just one or two of the modules have failed, but it was a little bit odd that it stopped after a couple days, stopped being able to accept a charge. And that's kind of when I went into panic mode of, okay, I need to stop driving this thing except for focusing on fixing it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it needs a full replacement if it's still functioning and you can still drive or something. Especially if they already replaced it once, it could have been they didn't install something properly or some cable was loose or something like that. So,
Yeah, but again, it drove basically like 90,000 miles since then. So, and it drove on track since then. It's been abused since then. So I'm not putting much pause into the remanufactured pack. This is likely just its own unique failure of sorts after 90,000 miles of additional abuse.
yeah, I would double check the Tesla app and make sure it's not under warranty because both of mine are for 150,000.
Both of yours are not Model 3 or Y, though, correct?
Yeah, Cybertruck and Model S.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 3 and Y, except for some of the earliest Model 3s, I think is just maximum 120.
I have a question, if I can speak.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of speculation on Twitter regarding the price for FSD in the future. Everybody having his own ideas, monthly, weekly, on mileage. And I haven't thought about it. Like every person or family house paying for internet, like roughly around like $50, $60 to $100 a month. What about if Tesla car will work as a router and use Starlink satellite to be able to use internet in a house, in a car, and on top of that, that will attract the same price for FSD and Starlink internet included at the same price. What do you guys think about that?
Omar?
Well, Starlink doesn't work indoors, so you need to claim line of sight to the sky. It doesn't work in a garage. The hardware is also pretty expensive, so it costs at least several hundred, if not, thousands of dollars. So it's not really that useful to add, let's say, $1,000 of parts and labor cost to a car, add an additional manufacturing step, slow down the production line potentially if, Starlink output can't keep up or there's some delay. All for something where the cars already have cellular that works everywhere, including indoors. So it's,
Well, I'm not talking about like today, but is that it will make sense in like let's say 5, 10 years if You know, Starlink technology is beyond expectations, and it will make sense to do something like this, right? I think.
The technology is not really there yet today, so maybe in the future, some future iteration of the technology could be good to integrate into vehicles. I could totally see that. I mean, they can access the Starlink over cellular service when there's nothing else, so they are kind of connecting to Starlink in that way. But ultimately, these are two separate companies. You can just buy a Starlink dish and plug it into your Cybertruck and use it, which is what I'm doing, and that works pretty well for most of the use cases people need.
Thank you, Omar. All right, we have a couple of quick announcements. So Dana in YouTube Live says, guys, they're sending out confirmation emails to early Cybertruck reservation holders for Tesla launch. Go check your emails. Finally, if you're a long-time Tesla investor and you have an early Cybertruck reservation, check your emails, junk folders, what have you. And then another one, Lance Webb said, we got a Cybertruck configuration email last week, but I ordered several days after Cybertruck reveal date, so we're past the day one reservations. All-wheel drive, April to June, Beast, late 2024. Thank you to both for keeping us updated with latest news. Appreciated. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Xander.
So I took a little bit of a different approach with the email that you just talked about that Martin talked that for the early shareholders. I used an older reservation number since it's a plan B for me. That way I can keep the one that I did a week after the announcement uh, in the bag. So I placed an order for another Cybertruck like a year later. So that's the number that I listed as the one to use. So I don't know if that's
Xander, your connection is cutting out. Is it cutting out for anybody else?
for me.
Okay. I'm going to put you on mute. James.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I received my confirm eligibility to take delivery of Foundation Series Cybertruck email today. And while I'm pretty sure statistically I'll probably get a VIN number within the next 2 weeks, I did submit my statements. I just want to make people aware to make sure that you put in your reservation number because I was missing that part and it wouldn't let me submit my documents.
Got it. Thank you, James. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Xander.
All right. Yeah, it looks like my phone decided to connect to the router, the original modem, instead of
Okay. So what do you have to
my
say?
mesh network. You can, yeah. So I used a different strategy of of using my latest reservation, like the one on 2022 or 2023, wherever that was, to do this accelerated approach. I have another one that I placed a week after. I'm gonna save that for another Cybertruck just in case. But this is a plan B for me. I am supposed to take delivery on Friday, so just hedging my bets.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. We have a new speaker. Let me just do a quick check. Okay. This space has been going on for about 2.5 hours. If you'd like to support the space, you may do so at the top of your screens through Patreon. Shrenik, Shah, go ahead.
Hey guys, when do you guys think autopilot is gonna get an update? It's been years.
Never. It's going to get a shot in the back of the head.
Fair enough.
They're going to replace the free basic autopilot with a free version of the new FSD stack at some point, and then they'll stop working on autopilot.
Yeah, I can't wait until they update that to the new AI.
SS, go ahead. SS, you may unmute yourself and go. I think you're muted. SS. All right, since we'll give you one more turn. 3, go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thanks to the Tesla community. So my question is, how far is away NVIDIA Drive in behind FSD? Like, is it a partner or is it a competitor?
NVIDIA Drive is a supplier to Tesla's competitors.
Yeah, so by extension. SS, if you have a follow-up question, you may unmute yourself and go ahead again.
Yeah. How long do you think it would take for NVIDIA Drive and the competitors to catch up to FSD?
Well, you can go see their products today. They're in, for example, the Lucid Air. You can go try Dream Drive. That's one example of a product built with NVIDIA Drive. You can go try Mercedes Drive Pilot. That's another example of a system that's built with NVIDIA Drive. These systems can't make lane changes yet. So they'll catch up at some point, but not this
Thank
year.
you. Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Hey, Ryan, are you getting any increased interest in FSD on your Tura?
I can't remember if we recently spoke about this or not, but yes, I am actually. Well, I mean, we recently spoke about this. I can't remember if I mentioned that. Yes, I have had a slight increase. Specifically, I've had because I've had to like potentially move people out of the Model Y that I was looking to sell, that I was unwrapping. I did let those renters, the 4 that I had upcoming, know that I was considering selling the car, and one of them specifically said, as long as the car that I'm getting in also has FSD, that's fine. And again, I even stipulate that does not guarantee the FSD is live, but it has the FSD package. So that was one. I had a renter. I had someone just reach out to me on social media who wanted to rent, specifically to try FSD 12. I didn't yet have FSD 12 on my cars. And there's one other, but yeah, actually, I've had kind of a noticeable uptick on specifically that since I think you most recently asked me about that like 2 months ago, and then there was one mention before then, and then there have been 2 mentions since then of people that do want to try specifically FSD 12.
There you go. That's good news for Tesla investors. This could be an indication. Obviously, the data sample size is very small, but could be an indication of an increased interest in FSD, maybe a precursor of a FSD take rate increase along with V12 improvements. And Ryan, I'm sure will keep us updated. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep, and then just for final context on that, I have 12 cars listed on Turo. About half of them have FSD, and it all mentions in my listing whether or not it has it, but it isn't an easy thing to find within the Turo kind of search. So that's just additional context for how people might stumble across that.
Yeah, exactly right. David?
It's come up, and I guess there's no way to handle this. Do you have renters who get strikes and then some of your cars are in jail for a period of time, or how's that been working for you?
Does happen, especially early on in this new strike program. It affected autopilot as well. Well, first of all, it does affect autopilot as well, and that it was becoming an issue. But I've actually had it happen less recently, or I've had people get strikes less recently. I don't know what the correlation is there. One second, there's a bumper in the road here that I'm just driving past. All right. Everything else seems all right. There's just randomly a bumper in the road. Yeah, I was having issues with it, and now I'm not as much. So, unclear what changed in people's behavior. But it hasn't been significant, and that's why I do have in my listing that the FSD package does not guarantee access to FSD beta, because I have had a few people upset that either it already had all the strikes or that they got the last strike, and that was a problem initially. Um, and now I'm seeing the car that's on the tow truck that just lost the bumper. Interesting.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. If you are requested to speak, and I'm not accepting it, there's probably a reason. There's definitely a reason, and the reason varies. But you can always leave a reply, and if you see a good reply with a question, I will send you an invite. Steven.
Question on FSD, this free FSD. If you have a fleet like Hertz or like Ryan has a fleet, and you get the free FSD, could they basically advertise, hey, we have free FSD, come and try it?
Are you kidding? They would have every single car crashed within a month.
Great
So
idea,
not
Steven.
not a
Good
good
job.
idea.
You have to understand the people who are renting these cars are not the most educated people. They're not Tesla experts. They can't even figure out how to put it into drive. Okay. They're already confused with that. Now you're going to throw FSD at them? I mean, they probably wouldn't turn it on. I would love it. I'd definitely rent from Hertz more if they all had FSD. But right now, they're all basic autopilot only.
Michelle.
Hey, I don't know how long you talked about, like, was the boat being hacked or not, and I don't want to bring you back down this rabbit hole again, but like, I thought that was a pretty funny idea that they mostly run on systems that you would pray, like, please don't plug this into the internet. It's like some sort of like old Windows embedded machine that might run internal CNC systems in those boats. So like, yeah, they're very vulnerable to any physical access, but they're usually air gapped, so it's not some sort of like remote attack to the boat being done entirely remotely. If they were compromised or anything of that sort happened, is what it was with, like somebody on board being involved.
Thank you, Michelle. Omar, anything to add to what Michelle said?
I mean, he's probably right. Physical would probably be the easiest way to do it, but there's really a number of ways to do it.
As there always is.
Just Ada.
Thank you. This is just a short question. Someone just recently mentioned if Hertz would deploy the Tesla autopilot feature. Does Hertz maintain any more Teslas, or are they all gone? Thank you.
They still have a large fleet of Teslas within their inventory. They also have other EVs as well, but yeah, they're still pretty big in the space. They sold off 15 to 20% of their inventory, but that was not all of it, far from it.
Thank you.
I'll just lay out some additional context. They initially, I think, announced an order of 200,000. I want to say they only ended up buying like 90,000 as well. So just about 10 to a high end 20,000 vehicles So that was why it got all the media coverage that it had, but they never ended up buying the full amount of the fleet that they had initially intended to buy. And my opinion on it is that they just don't do a good job communicating kind of what to do with EVs. They also, yeah, there's just not enough training involved or charging infrastructure involved in the Hertz system to make for a high quality EV rental experience. And
Thanks for the additional color.
Yeah, I got a question. Just thinking of a way that Tesla could incentivize Hertz to continue buying their cars instead of selling them off. I wonder if Tesla would ever consider awarding Hertz as a company some sort of referral credits that they could use somehow. If a renter were to come back and purchase a car like on their site as a way of, since they were the ones that actually got them that test drive, so to speak.
I was initially going to say, like, I hate this idea because in my mind, the first thing that Hertz should do is just better education, better, again, charging infrastructure. And, but actually, I do like that idea. I think that they obviously should do something like that, make it possible for you to, like, yeah, if you ever rented from Hertz a Tesla, that should be an option for who referred you. So I think they should do that. I don't see that benefiting Hertz in a meaningful way. Again, I think that they really should get charging infrastructure at every location. I just rented, or I'm currently renting an EV6 from Budget, and they had a Tesla there as well as this Kia, and they don't have any chargers there. Let alone the charger doesn't exist inside this vehicle, the mobile connector. So again, a large part of what these companies need is better education, better access to infrastructure. But I do like what you're saying as far as, yeah, if you're buying a Tesla after renting a Hertz car, you should have that benefit and they should have the benefit. Also, just a completely unrelated random note. Just saw my third Hummer EV of the day, 2 Hummer EV SUVs and 1 Hummer truck. A surprisingly Hummer riddled day for a low volume EV.
Come on.
So fuck Hertz, okay? Nobody gives a shit about Hertz. This company is such a fucking shit show. They were already bankrupt before they even bought the Teslas, okay? That's how poorly run this company is. Does Hertz have a bright future? No. There's already driverless cars on the street. FSD Beta 12 is rolling out. When cars drive themselves, is anyone going to go rent from Hertz at the airport? No. They're doomed. Not even Jesus himself, if he came back, could save this company from going out of business. So these guys, they go bankrupt. Okay, hey, what's the plan to get out of bankruptcy? Hey, I know, let's buy 100,000 Teslas at full price during the height of the pandemic when there's an auto shortage. Yeah, great idea. Let's buy 100,000 Teslas at full price. I mean, we didn't tell them to do it. Then they buy the Teslas. They do such a shitty job that, they rented out half to Uber drivers and they realized the Uber drivers were trashing them. So they reallocated to consumers, but there wasn't enough demand. And then they blame it on Tesla. They're like, oh, they cut prices. Well, I mean, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is supposed to be your business. You're supposed to buy these things at a discount, use them, and then sell them quickly and get most of your money back so that there's minimal depreciation. You guys are idiots, okay? That's the reason you lost money. It's because you're idiots. And then the CEO got fired. He's trying to save his ass by blaming Tesla. And they're like, it's not Tesla's fault, you dumbass. It's your fault. So I think the value proposition for EVs and fleets is just massive. That's why so many police are buying it. So many other companies, power company that maintains a fleet, they're like, we could save a massive amount if we go electric. And I think that trend is going to continue. But I mean, Hertz is just kind of a dumpster fire.
All right. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Greg? Greg, your sound fault is bad. Can you guys hear Greg? Omar, can you hear him?
I can hear him, but there's just a lot of background noise. I would suggest maybe the voice isolation option if he has an iPhone.
Greg, you have to swipe down from the upper right corner, and in the upper right corner again, select mic mode and voice isolation. In the meantime, who did we not get to? Anybody? Any questions, comments? Please record to speak.
Yep.
Sure. I respect your perspective on that. I mean, just for some context, again, I'm a Turo host right now. I'm building my own car sharing platform. I think that there's some truth to what you're saying, but I also don't. I mean, I guess I should add I'm in California, but I've had some damage. I've had a lot of body shops that can work on damage relatively quickly once they actually have it into the shop. And my delays for parts haven't really been that meaningful, especially windshields. Uh, side glass. When I've had issues like that, again, I'm in California, but my windshield replacements almost always get done within a day or two. They are getting more expensive than they used to be. They used to be like $600. Now they're $1,200 to $1,400 for even a Model 3 windshield. But timeline, I haven't had the same issue you've had, and I'm curious what if you brought it into a shop, have they actually given you an estimate for when they could fix that?
Yeah, here in California, it's pretty good. Whenever I've had a situation, broken window, broken glass, usually they can take it in next day and fix it pretty quick. If not, come to my place and fix it. So it's generally pretty good. Some of the parts are a little more expensive if they do break, but generally it kind of just doesn't need a lot of service if nothing goes wrong. So usually you're pretty much fine. It's only really if something breaks or someone crashes it or something that you might face a bill. But if you have insurance and have a good deductible, that's not really a concern for most people either. So most of this is just sort of like growing pains. Obviously, when something's new, it's a little bit harder. As time goes on, there's more and more shops popping up that work on Teslas. There's part suppliers, they come up with, sort of generic parts or alternative parts, and the situation just gets better. Obviously, I think with the next gen platform too, it's going to be even lower cost and designed to have replacement parts that hit an even lower price point. So they're really doing a lot of pretty amazing work and service these days, I think.
Omar, are the cameras attached to the windshield or is it two separate pieces?
It's a separate piece. So they'll recalibrate the cameras after replacing the windshield, but it's a separate enclosure that just kind of goes on the other side of the windshield. Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be cool. Obviously, it's not really FSD. It's a very different domain when you're flying, but yeah, Tesla AI plus a drone, there could be some cool things to do there. Maybe they'll make it a product eventually. Well, so apparently CATL made some comments saying that they're supplying Tesla with machinery to make LFP battery packs in Nevada. So this is, I don't know if they're doing it for Megapack or for their cars or what, but this sort of licensing deal where they get CATL's process and they manufacture the batteries domestically obviously has huge potential implications. The LFP chemistry, despite its lower energy density, is really the only one that just scales really well. So for the next gen platform in particular, it's going to be primarily LFP based. So where's that supply going to come from? Are we going to import millions of cars of LFP in from China? Probably not. We wouldn't qualify for the credits. But if you can make them in Nevada or make them in Texas, make them in your US based manufacturing facilities, well, then you've got the characteristics of the CATL battery that we love: low cost, long cycle life, great safety, charge to 100%, but you're able to get that $7,500 tax credit too. And that could drop the price of a Model 3 to close to $30,000, 31, 32,000, something like that, with the point of sale credit. So I'm not sure what the timeline is on actually getting output out of this, but it's potentially very significant news.
Hey, Tyler, well, quick question for you on the kind of rollout there. I know it's been talked about in other spaces. I just haven't yet gotten caught up on why the new Model 3 Highland doesn't yet have it, or maybe I'm wrong about that. But I guess, can you help update me on what's going on with Model 3 Highland and FSD 12? And then, yeah, just briefly, yeah, what are the differences that between that and Cybertruck also not getting it? Is it just because the Cybertruck's in lower volumes, so we've got less data on those vantage points and rear wheel steering? Wonderful. Thank you for all that context. And then briefly to address the question before, Freddie, I think there was a question about would wait until you've got version 12 or pay for FSD like subscription. Generally speaking, historically paying for the subscription does help in your prioritization of receiving software updates specifically related to FSD. So if you're someone that wants to try it, especially given the push, I can't guarantee that you will get it. There could be other reasons why you're not getting FSD 12 yet. But generally speaking, if you subscribe, you should expect to see it, the newest build of FSD coming much sooner by subscribing first.
For me, it was immediate.